Hello all, and welcome to episode 1, Pivoting the Project for Community Word Project's virtual benefit series, The Art Inside. My name is Menica, and I want to welcome you all tonight. Thank you for taking out the time to join us. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the hurt, the pain, the frustration, and the anger that we're all feeling at this current moment. You know, we can't continue to not have these conversations during such tragic moments, but tonight I would hope that we can all focus on hope, the inspiration of youth and how they are channeling their voices through the arts, and how they continue to inspire all of us through their poetry, through creativity, and through multiple mediums. You know, 15 years ago, I myself was a CWP student. I got heavily involved in poetry and performing all across the US with a couple of young women who are my best friends to this day. And CWP, also known as Community Word Project, allowed me to have a voice, and a confident one at that. And I wouldn't be here today without Community Word Project. And I want to thank you again for joining us tonight and celebrating the arts during this tragic pandemic. Community Word Project has done an amazing job at pivoting during this time and translating 90% of their programming into the virtual space, to continue to allow this content and this creativity and the lessons and the curriculum to continue to be accessible to students. And again, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight to kick off the series. And without further ado, I present to you your host for tonight, Abraham Williamson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Menica. As she mentioned, my name is Abraham Williamson, and I am the chair of the Associate Board for Community Word Project, which basically means that I get to serve with a group of incredible people, both on the Associate Board and the Senior Board. And if you're asking yourself sort of why are we here, what's sort of the purpose of us in the series and the art inside and pivoting the project? Well, it was born out of necessity and opportunity. Normally around this time, we and many other organizations would be hosting a benefit dinner in maybe a large and elaborate sort of auditorium or ballroom together with hundreds of people, and honoring students and teachers and other folks who have contributed to the goal, which is to help students find and raise their voice. But because of things that are happening in the world, that's not possible. And so the senior board sort of tasked the associate board with figuring out a way where we could still get this message out and continue to hold true to our mission to raise students' voices. And thus, the Art Inside was born. And if you're on and listening to this call, you're listening to the first and inaugural episode in this series, Pivoting the Project. Before we go any further, though, not all of the folks who have been contributing to our mission are still with us. And we want to take this time to dedicate to the late Miss Vizcaino. Sandra Vizcaino, affectionately known as Miss Vizcaino, was a leader in her vision for teaching our children, because she organized instructional material and created a caring environment in PS 27, which is Agnes Y. Humphrey School, and other institutions in her career. She was well liked and will be terribly missed by everyone. One thing many didn't know is that she had aspirations to start a neighborhood school for young children. So may she rest in peace. So with that, we kind of want to notify you of something very important for tonight, which is where you can go and support this mission as we get into our content. And if you ever pause and think, how can I support? You want to go right up here to theartinside.org, which is where you can donate. You'll see that folks have already been donated to support, and that money goes to funding the program and teaching artists. Okay, ground rules or lessons, if you will, before we get into our and introduce our panelists. Feel free to ask any question in the Q&A section, which should be here or here, depending on where you have it set on your computer. And we'll be taking questions toward the end, though. So don't expect us to kind of get into those at the beginning. Without further ado, we'd like to introduce our panelists for today, who will be Dorothy Jones and Katy Rainey. And I'll let them, first Dorothy and then Katy, sort of introduce themselves, what school or how they're affiliated with CWP. So welcome, Dorothy.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Jones, and I'm an English teacher at the Young Women's Leadership School of Queens. Been there for about 10 or 11 years, I can't really remember. And I've been with CWP and Katy in particular for the past 3 years with my ninth graders.
And hey, I'm Katy Rainey. I'm a writer and a teaching artist. I'm the director of CWP's Teaching Artist Project, and I'm also a creative writing teaching artist at the Young Women's Leadership School, and I've been out there for 5 years, and I've been with CWP for 100 years, 8 years, something like that.
Fantastic. Okay, now that we have the introductions underway, I want to ask sort of the first question of the evening, and it's why a lot of people are here and listening to this, and that is, how has this impacted the students and the children, particularly with their writing and their voice? How have children's writing, how has it changed during quarantine, and what are you seeing in the writing as you continue to go through some of those same exercises that you were going through sort of 6 months ago or last year?
Yeah, well, I'll just say for the creative writing part, I have an inbox full of protest poems right now. So that's how it's definitely changed. My kids are writing me poems without me assigning them anything. It's how they're getting out a lot of their frustrations. So I've seen that great shift in the last 2 months. Students have been really wanting things, wanting outlets to express themselves. And then in the last week alone, just of their own volition, they've sent me multiple poems because they can't be there in person for the protest. So this is how they express themselves right now.
Same, and then on my end, I also get a lot of personal emails where they're saying, you know, they're sort of sick of being in those four walls with their family, and they need someone else to talk to a lot of times. So I might get emails saying I'd like to talk, or just long phone calls with students who just, they need an outlet for that energy and for the thoughts. And today I had a conversation with a senior, and she really just wanted to talk. There was, you know, she was anxious and she didn't know where to put it because she doesn't see her friends anymore, and they text, but they don't talk. And she said she didn't realize how much she missed the interactions with adults, with students, with everyone within the building. And so, you know, a lot of it, she, right away when we were done talking, she said, I'll email you tomorrow and tell you how I'm feeling then. So they definitely need an outlet for these emotions and thoughts, and just to know that they're connected.
Thank you both. What I'm hearing is there are the same problems and new problems now in getting across communication, both teacher to student, but also from student to student, really person to person. And at least this is my view, I'm sure folks would agree with me, teachers are, and particularly teaching artists, are excellent problem solvers, particularly with the arts. So to get to my question, so what are some of the things that you're being sort of thrown into doing now that you weren't doing before, out of sort of necessity, to make sure that you're meeting the students where they are and also sort of helping them to continue to have their voice be heard? Because as folks have mentioned already on this, episode, there's a lot going on right now, and a lot of what we see isn't necessarily a student's voice. So what are some ways that you're affirming that student's voice now?
Dorothy, you want to go first? You want me to?
Just so there's this cool function on Google where they can have chats with one another. And so the other ninth grade teacher that Katy's been working with actually told me about it. And I have them in their own smaller groups so they don't have to speak with the whole class when they're wondering about anything or they have a thought about it. Definitely more emailing. There's a lot more written word communication than face-to-face. And they can request meets with me personally where we're on video, but a lot of them really seem to want to just communicate using written word, and that's very different from when we're in school. So I try to make myself more available to answer their emails and even to reach out to them when they aren't reaching out to me. As an English teacher, I always have to read between the lines and see if there's more there. I mean, there's numerous stories across the board. English teachers are always like the first line of defense when students want to say something, but they don't know how or who. They sort of give you a hint, and you have to pick up on it and be aware of it. So I'm more aware of the email communication and even what they're writing in their chats and in their homework assignments.
Brilliant. Katy?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, definitely I'm getting just personal emails constantly from students because that's something that in class, like we normally have those, you know, small asides, or a student might come talk to me about something. And so now they're doing that over email. And even former students, I'm getting a lot of former students from previous years emailing me poems they're writing right now. I'm like, oh, that's great. Like, I love them. Keep them coming. So definitely been a lot of communication that way. But there is that like we're missing definitely those smaller moments with students just day to day.
And it's interesting because on the front end, when I plan for things, I have to think in terms of, is this going to affect them adversely? How will this play out if someone is in stress right now and they haven't identified themselves? I'm more aware of just the nuances of what we're reading, what we're doing, and what I'm giving them to do, because I have to be cognizant of whether they have the time, whether they're working and they're essential workers, whether their parents are essential workers, if someone's passed away in their home or within their smaller community. So there's a lot more caution before just giving information. In class, you can see the face change. And so, you know, oh, I have to talk to that student later, or you might dial it back a little bit if you see someone's uncomfortable. Digitally, you can't really do that. So you have to be aware of it before you give them the information.
Yeah, I had a student write me a letter. They didn't want to email, and they emailed to ask for my address. I was like, why? And she said, I'd rather write you a letter. And I said, absolutely, go ahead. So I got a letter from a student.
A personal touch. Speaking of close to home, so I'm an uncle, and probably at least a dozen of my nieces and nephews are school age right now. In fact, I invited many of them to go to theartinside.org. And in terms of communicating with them and their experience, it varies. And if you're a parent watching this right now, if you have students at home where you've sort of been put in a situation where now it's your responsibility to help your child or this student find their voice for 7 hours that you normally didn't have to try to help them do that. What are some ways where you can assist with that and sort of use that time, and what advice sort of would you have for parents on being able to maintain that level for a long period of
time? Recognize that there are things you don't know, and be vulnerable with your children and say, I'm not sure. Let's do this together. Let's tackle it together. Listen to them, because they sometimes know, but they're scared to say they know because they don't they're afraid of what the response may be from their parents. So even in terms of like my middle one is 16 and she's looking into colleges, and she just asked me, do you think I could go to San Francisco by myself? And I said, I don't know. Do you think you could? So more of the dialing back what you think is the right answer, and really being vulnerable and saying, I'm not sure. Let's talk through it together.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That like is my answer. 90% of what I do in class is not give any answers to any students. I ask more questions of them and just get curious about what they're writing and show that interest. We call it inquiry-based learning, but it really works. And students come to their own answers. It helps them process their own emotions and figure out why they're feeling a certain way. So I think like the best thing you can do as a parent, and honestly, like I wish this had happened to me as a kid, that an adult would just sit in a room and be like, I'd love to hear your work if you're comfortable sharing it with me. And if they share it, either ask questions or like listen without judgment, but like not to give, I guess, any judging responses back, you know?
Brilliant. I see that we have Sheila sending us some messages over here as well. I just want to remind folks that you can submit your questions. We're coming up on our Q&A here in a few minutes, but just in keeping with this a little bit more, because people want to hear sort of the stories or the connection. Are there any examples that you have for us that you could sort of read aloud to give us an example about what you're talking about, and then also maybe talk about why CWP, like why are students and schools and families continuing to come back to CWP over and over again? So do you have an example and sort of connect that to the uniqueness of CWP's mission?
Yeah, I have an example. Oh, go ahead. No, you go.
On Monday, so we're reading Macbeth in my 9th grade class that Katy comes in. And on Monday, I gave them an article about the importance of words. And I let them go ahead and read it. And it was talking about the verbiage of thugs and looters, and how this language creates a perception of people that it's tied to. And then they had to look into Macbeth and look at how the characters have been portrayed, the language that's used over and over to get you to feel a certain way about the characters. They're particularly interested in the witches and Lady Macbeth, kind of because I told them they're women, they should be. But also they picked up on the language right away. They enjoyed reading the article. And then the next day on Tuesday, I asked them, do you want to meet up with Katy on Wednesday, which we do anyway, but a lot of them, they'll be in and out. Like one week we might have 12, the next week we might have 8, the next week we might have 20. So there's no consistency. And unanimously, they all said, yes, we want an outlet with Katy. We want the art outlet with Katy. And when she came on yesterday, she asked them, we can just talk, or we can do something to get those feelings out. And they were like, feelings, all in the chat. So it's definitely like right away, right then, right there. You see that it works and it's necessary.
Yeah, I think it's good that you went first, because that actually is a pretty good example of just what we do in general. That like I came in, I knew that they were talking about language, and like obviously that was something I wanted to address this week too. And I knew the assignment that Dorothy had given them and what they were talking about. And so I expanded on that and said, like, language is a really powerful tool, and that power can be used for good or it can be used for bad. What are some examples that we're experiencing where it might be used for the worst right now? And so we had a really good conversation around that. And then talking about the importance of telling their own stories and getting their own stories out there, and not letting someone else tell the narrative of who they are. And so that's where I got a ton of poetry from. Actually, I have one to share. I know Minika had asked me to share it. This student actually sent it to me before class, unprompted, and sparked a whole lot of inspiration with her classmates. And so is that okay, Abraham, if I just read it real quick?
Absolutely. I mean, we would love to hear that. Yes, absolutely.
It's called It Ends With Us by Justine White. I'm not saying all lives don't matter. I'm just saying my life matters. They don't see danger when they see you. They do when they look at my brother. It never ended with my ancestors, but it will end with us. It never stopped with Rosa on the bus, but it will with us. An innocent man shot down, yet you expect us to smile and be happy like clowns. How many more tears should we shed when another Black man is shot dead? How many mothers will cry because her son had to die? Your son died, but why? Is it because his nose isn't straight or the thick curls in his hair? Is it the color of his skin or that his lips aren't that thin? Do we only have to look like you to actually fit in? Do I have to look like you so I can live? Why do you kill us for being bold and loving the way we were built? I'm not saying all lives don't matter. I'm just saying Black people are killed because of the way we were built. Trayvon, Philandro, Michael, Eric, and now George. How many more hashtags do you need to feel our pain? We cry today, and then you spew hate like rain. No peace, no justice until you stop this. Stop killing us because you wish we didn't exist. It didn't end at Selma, but it will with us.
My goodness, that gives you chills. Like it's students are like these. They're people. They're adult. They're just sort of smaller and sometimes taller, bigger adults than we are, and it just gives you. It's electrifying to hear how aware they are of what's going on around them and to such detail that they can describe it. And I think you speak to the point, which is the CWP helps to draw that out of students. Like you need teaching artists to help cultivate that voice, to help to raise it, to help them to explore it in healthy ways. So if you want to see, because poems are just one aspect of how to find your voice. There's also various artworks or people standing and oratory. And there are other examples actually on the artinside.org as well, where you can take a look at some sample work. But I think that's fantastic. Now we're going to move into the Q&A. What's interesting is that if you send in a question right now, it would be the first one. You would get your question read immediately, because what we have right now in the chat is just a ton of kind of notes and summaries on what you all have said, because it's been so powerful and so potent. So I guess I'll leave this time to you to kind of talk a little bit more about sort of what the path forward is going to look like for you both, because nobody knows kind of what's going to happen after this series. Why should people sort of come back and continue to see kind of what's going on with CWP in this series, and also how are you going to reimagine, like moving forward, how to continue to reach this mission as the ground keeps kind of shaking beneath us?
I do want to interject that Justine is usually a very goofy girl. She likes to joke around. She's never really serious. So just to drive home the fact that the art, if we think of art as being like a release of emotions, and a lot of times I think the general public tend to think that art is all happy, good, and uplifting. And for a girl that is generally happy, uplifting, and positive, to see her really delve into serious matter in a serious voice, it proves to me that like we actually did something this year for her.
Yeah, I was just thinking that before quarantine and before the pandemic, I knew Justine was a good writer, but I couldn't get it out of her. She was like, yeah, I'll get to it. And then when the pandemic hit and she was in quarantine, this is not the first poem I've gotten unexpectedly from Justine there's other ones about the pandemic, about everything that's going on. And, even myself, like on Monday or Sunday, I was like, what am I gonna do as an art teacher? And then bam, this poem hits my inbox and I was like, oh, this is why we do that. This is why this is important. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
Powerful lessons and stories. Does it feel like we've kind of come to the end of this first episode? I mean, it's been very enlightening to just kind of understand better sort of what you all are facing and how you're using it to prepare the future. So now we kind of want to shift a little bit into the closing remarks. Do you all have anything that you would like to say really quickly before we get to kind of the closing remarks on any of the previous questions, or anything you'd like to add before we kind of shift more into our closing?
No, I think just
Oh,
oh, you're gonna
we
ask
have a
me,
question.
can I answer?
We have a question. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I got
No, go
so
ahead.
excited. We got a question at the 24th hour. So, how do you help students generate new ideas?
I start small. I always start all my lessons with something smaller and build on it. So like yesterday, how we wrote protest poems was I had them start with thinking about their body and whatever emotion they were feeling in that moment and the place in their body they were feeling it. So like if they were feeling anxiety and they felt it in their arms, I had them write that down. And then I asked questions on top of that to get them to write notes. And then I had them do a rant from that body part about how they were feeling. And then I had them take those notes and create a poem out of it. So like it steps along the way. Oof.
I think too, they trust you, Katy. And that's a big part of it, is that they trust both of us, and they know that, you know, if it's not harming them, that we can help them with it. If it's harming them, then we have to get someone at a different pay grade or education level or whatever than we have. But they know that they can say, oh, I just don't like this. And we won't say, well, you shouldn't. It's more, okay, tell me why. Okay, now, and it's like Katy said, those questions, the small questions. And I think being heard and being valued makes them want to have their own ideas, and they want to contribute. The fact that you gave them journals, you didn't have to give them anything. They were super excited to get journals as soon as you came in. I didn't tell them, but they were excited. When you didn't come the next time they had to decorate it, they just did it because they already had this built in, oh, this person cares about me idea. And so, you know, when you show a little bit of care, concern, and saying, you know, I was once a kid, because Katy shares her journals with them, her own journals from when she was their age, they're able to say, wow, maybe you weren't born old, and they open up.
Yeah, the thing I do on the first day of school is share whatever date it was from when I was 14, 15 years old, and I read the page aloud, which is, even as a 33-year-old, super nerve-wracking reading your like 14-year-old thoughts in front of a room of teenagers, but always goes well.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Sheila, for your question. Also want to thank Annie and Sam and Liam and Benjamin for engaging in our chat and encouraging both Dorothy and Katy. So now we're going to kind of come to a close and kind of set up sort of the next episode. So we want to thank you for joining us today. And we ask that you will join us for our next episode, which is named Wordplay. It's going to be really good. You can visit our site to kind of see what that might look like, and again, see sample student work and donate. And we want to thank you again for joining us tonight. And if you'd like to register for that next episode that we mentioned, again, it's Wordplay, which is going to be a virtual poetry slam with a twist. Or if you want to make a donation of at least, say, $20 or so, which will go a long way to helping students and teaching artists to help keep art in the schools, you can visit, again, theartinside.org. And I'm sure you've been wondering, sort of like this logo here as well. And if you want to learn more about art and literacy programs, you can visit CommunityWordProject.org, which is sort of the umbrella that made everything we're experiencing right here possible. But again, if you want to do anything today, just go ahead and visit the artinside.org for the next episode. Now we want to take this time to really thank our host, Minika. Thank you so much. And our guests, who are going to leave us with a few parting remarks before we bid ado. And we'll start in reverse order this time. So Katy, if you'll go first, please.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Abraham and Minika, for having us, and Dorothy for being my gracious partner as always, and for all of you for being here. You know, that $20 give buys 10 journals for my students, so that's really helpful. But this organization has meant the world for me for 8 years, and I'm really happy that you're all a part of it. Thank you for having me.
And for me, I would say a closing remark would be, I see the students come back every year. I mean, I know them, they know Katy, they get so excited when they see Katy in the building just to say hello, because they appreciate that they had a space and they had a person that gave them the space to be themselves, whatever that is, and not have to sort of perform what a good student is or what a good girl is. And she opens them up to poetry, literature, and art that they might not ever be opened up to. So it is very valuable, and the students recognize it as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I think at this time, Minika is going to come back on board, and we are going to fade to black until next time.
Thank you so much, Abraham, for hosting. That was amazing. Thank you, Katy. Thank you, Miss Jones, or Dorothy Jones. And I appreciate everyone who was able to join tonight, and have a great night, and hope to see you at episode 2 and 3. Thank you.
Bye, thanks.